Today's question comes from Jennifer. I wanted to know how many years of experience did you have in the PM field before getting hired as a project manager? The reason I ask is because I'll be graduating in June of this year, and I want to look and go get a job as a PM once I'm certified. The only issue is that I currently work as a content specialist coding emails, not really in the PM field or as an account manager. Well, Jennifer, thanks for the question. Great question. Most of my experience managing projects, well, at least a good chunk of it, came before I knew there was this formal discipline called project management out there. I was working in a training department first and got promoted, so I was managing the other trainers and doing the day-to-day stuff. I've always been in a process improvement, so I started up projects in those departments just to make things better. And then later on, I got into management on the call center floor and began managing operations for a startup company later on. I also created and managed my own projects there too. So for the most part, I had initiated all these projects myself. And I didn't know at the time that there was this thing called project management out there. So I didn't think of these things as projects. I just thought, we need to go do this stuff. Let's get it done. Later on, I found out about formal project management after I'd been laid off from that startup company that I was talking about. I decided to target companies that were likely to have formal project management going on, and I was willing to start at the bottom. So I took a job as a developer, and this is moving from like a senior operations manager. I took a job as a developer, and I was a technical guy before too. So in this role, I was a project team member, and I expressed interest in becoming a project manager in the company. So I did things like volunteering to help out the project managers with things and just showing a general level of interest in the process and all that kind of stuff. I volunteered for other project managers. Eventually they started having me lead projects as the informal project manager, and then I really started managing the projects myself. I was usually the technical lead on those as well, because I was coming from a role as a developer. My job title never changed that whole time, and I never received a promotion into project management. I was promoted, I think, to a lead developer during that time, but not as a project manager, even though I was managing projects. But it was a great experience, and it just grew a lot in my understanding of project management as a discipline. And then during that time, I also went back to school for a degree in project management, and so I was working full-time as a developer and then trying to do as much as I could to gain experience during the day there, and then going to school at night for about 3 years. I also got involved with my local PMI chapter and volunteered for the students of PMI SIG, or the students of PM Specific Interest Group of the PMI. And that was after I discovered you didn't need to be a PMP to join the PMI. And the student rate was about $30, I think, back then, as opposed to the $120 for regular members. So it was really a steal. All I had to do was print out the student registration forms from PMI's website, and then I went into the registrar at the university and had them sign off on the form, basically just certifying that I'm a student, and then sent it in and was a PMI member for about $30. And then as a PMI member, you can join your local chapter, which I think is about $20 to do that. And that's for a year, so it's very cheap. And then they've also got these. They used to be called Specific Interest Group, and now they're called Communities of Practice, but they still have some of the SIGs out there too. They're kind of phasing them out. So after I graduated, I went for the PMP. I waited until after I was done with school to go for the PMP. For a while there, I was thinking about doing both at the same time, but decided to wait until after I was done with school. Now, an important thing to note was that I'd been managing projects at that point for 7 or 8 years by that time. So I had to go back over my past work history and have little aha moments where I said, hey, that was a project? And yes, it was. So again, that experience that I had initiating and managing projects back when I was a training manager and a call center manager and an operations manager, a lot of that stuff was really projects. So going back and looking at that history, I could specifically call out the specific projects, looking at it in retrospect. I just didn't think about it, in a formal project management way back then. So things like building an online dispatch system, that was one of the things that we did. It just seemed ad hoc at the time, as just something that we need to get done. And I didn't manage them very well back then, just because I didn't have the background of formal project management, so there were probably a lot of things that I could have done better, but they were projects. When I felt the need for further growth, I decided to try out the aerospace industry. So I had been in this financial services firm for quite a while, and I was a developer. That was my title, and then a lead developer. But I started managing projects. I think my title was actually analyst or something like that. So at a certain point, I started applying for project management positions within the company that I was at and outside of the company too. And I actually got 2 offers almost simultaneously. One was within the company as a project analyst, I think it was, and then the other one was outside of the company. And this was going into a completely different industry. It was the aerospace industry. And the title there was project coordinator. But it was essentially being able to see everything and get used to what's going on in the aerospace industry. So, just I decided to try that industry out, and it was a pay cut for me. But in order to do so, I had to start at the bottom, because I knew how to manage projects and people, but I didn't know anything about the aerospace industry. So I took a role as a project coordinator, and again, I was making much less than what I had been. Within a year and a half, I had soaked up enough industry knowledge within aerospace from the engineers, the scientists, and the project managers that I was able to leverage my past experience and become a PM in aerospace. And a little later, I was promoted to the lead project manager for a contract on a large satellite mission. So it's one of those things where every step along the way, you need to take a look at what you're doing and see what the best stepping stone is going to be. That's probably one of the ways to look at it, is that sometimes you have to use these stepping stones where it may be perceived as a step down, but you're really putting yourself into a good position for growth in the future. I know that was a really long answer to this question, but Jennifer, I want to stress that if you don't really have any experience managing projects, then you may not be ready for the PMP certification. There's a requirement of 3 to 5 years of experience leading and directing project tasks. So your title doesn't have to actually be project manager, but if you're on a fairly large project and you're a lead on one piece of that, and you're really managing and directing project activities, then it's very likely that experience will count, as long as you're doing a lot of the things, as long as you meet that criteria. And you can look in the PMP handbook for more guidance there. But the CAPM exam might be something that you want to look at. There are also the Prince 2 Foundation, I believe. I'm not exactly sure what the requirements are. So any of these, you're going to want to go and look up and see what the requirements are, and if your experience meet these requirements. But the ITIL exam is another one in the IT field that I've actually started to get a little bit interested in. I might actually go and do myself, but it's an IT-related certification, ITIL, so that might be something else to look at. But the PMP is probably not for you yet, just because if you haven't got that work experience. So, all right, thank you, everybody.
Subscribe for automatic updates at pmstudent.org. Music provided by Derek K. Miller of penmachine.com.